And here we go to another edition of the Real Fellas Talk Sports. I'm David Burnett, your host for tonight, joined by the fellas. And let me make an introduction of one of my close friends, former co-workers, one of the hardest working men in Washington, D.C., Al Richardson. How you doing, Al?
How you doing, sir? Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being on the show and being a regular watcher of the Real Fellas. Chuck Snowden. How are you, sir?
David, I'm really well. As you know, I love 7 o'clock on Wednesday. And Al, welcome. And thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Larry Abels, the voice of reason on this show. Larry, how you doing?
It's all good. And I want to give a shout out to Al. Thanks a lot for joining us, bro.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
This is definitely a Washington, D.C. based show. With the centerpiece of the universe being in Indianapolis, Indiana. I just want to make sure to know everybody knows that. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, and the Final Four are set. We're going to start talking about the OKC Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. They played last night, and OKC shut them down. Let me start with our new guest, Al Richardson. Al, what did you think of last night's game? What's going on with OKC in Minnesota?
OKC is going to be an incredibly tough out for Minnesota because they have 9 guys who all play defense. You can't hunt matchups. You can't hunt matchups offensively against them. And they always will send 3 at your best player. And if your best player is a scorer and not a facilitator, they're going to muck up your offense. And what you're going to see in this series is you're going to see scoring gaps. You know, OKC doesn't depend on their offense to beat you. So if their offense is even mediocre, like it was last night, they still got 112 points. But their defense can shut you down. And the scary part is they may be able to play Rudy Gobert off the floor without taking their big men off the floor because both of their big men move their feet. You know, so that it's gonna be a tough matchup, especially if Naz Reid doesn't make some shots. They got to make shots.
Minnesota looks completely vulnerable to me. They've started off slow in every series that they've had this season, every playoff series. I think they can be taken out. What do you think, Chuck?
I think, first of all, I loved Al's view on last night's game. However, I've loved the playoffs, as you guys have known this season. Incredible playoffs. However, at the end of the day, you got to make shots. You just got to make shots. And if you don't make shots, OKC is off and running. And Dante, Naz Reid, and the kid that's the cousin to SGA, they all shot poorly, absolutely poorly. I mean, like 1 for 9, 1 for 9, 2 for 13, something crazy like that. And of course, that's not a winning formula. I must say something though to the group. I've been doubting OKC all season because I think the regular season is different from the playoffs.
And
I must
it is.
acknowledge,
Yes.
OKC is the real deal because, again, what Al said, they play incredible defense. They will turn you over and get out. They can shoot the basketball, and they've got height, and they've got a star, and they've got defenders, and they got a deep bench. They go 9 deep, but sometimes they go 10 deep. They had a guy with a beard on last night, number 34. I didn't even see him in the previous series, and he had 9 points. So OKC is a legitimate contender.
Do you think, Larry, that OKC is a powerhouse over over Minnesota, and Minnesota is vulnerable at this point?
Well, I mean, they split during the regular season. You got to keep that in mind, even though OKC won 19 more games. Al touched on the thing that you guys have been hearing me say: defense, defense, defense. Last week, I was mentioning that Denver played a boxing one defense and kept SGA from driving. Minnesota didn't do that. And when he drives, he gets to the foul line. By the same token, the way OKC's defense was, they packed the lane and they stopped Ant from driving. I think he got one shot by the rim, and he only took 9 shots. As Chuck was saying, nobody shot well, other than Julius Randle. He played pretty well
in the first half.
Yeah, but I mean, he still got 28 points. If you give him 28 points or something like that, I can't knock him.
Yeah, 20 at halftime.
Right. Yeah. The problem was they shot over 50 3-point shots and weren't hitting their shots. And as Al said, they turned them over a lot. It was all over once they get off to the run against you.
What then, Larry, does Minnesota need to do to change the way this narrative and change the way that they're playing? What do they have to do?
Have to adjust their defense I think they should use a similar defense that Denver did, because SGA is going to drive and get to that free throw line. He didn't even shoot that well, but he got like 30 points because he probably went to the free throw line 1,000 times. The other thing they have to do, I think they have to play Anthony Edwards off the ball a little bit and try to open up some other opportunities for him.
Looking at SGA, I just want to talk about SGA real quickly. He's the king of the mid-range jump shot. He brought that back. And if he continues to shoot well in the mid-range, Al, what do you think is going to happen?
If he continues to shoot well in the mid-range, he is a good enough passer that he's going to open up for everything else. And those guys, I wouldn't call them snipers, but they tend to make their open opportunities. They don't go through those long droughts. And the irony is the one time they did have a drought was when they led by 25 against this Minnesota team, the next to last game of the year, in the fourth, and they blew that game and lost. But that's the anomaly. That won't normally happen. And SGA, if he's in the lane, you have two choices. You double him, he passes. You don't double him, he's long. He gets to the rim. He gets to the free throw line. And that's the real issue is once he gets in the lane, it's 8 out of 10 times he's getting a bucket or 2 free throws. And he's an excellent free throw shooter.
Chuck, what needs to happen and who else needs to show up for both teams to make this series as close as many people think it should be?
Okay, so against the Lakers, there's a member of this Minnesota team named McDaniels. And he had 2 games against the Lakers where he had over 30 points. And I didn't know who he was. Well, I haven't seen that McDaniels the rest of the playoffs so far. So I think he has to reemerge, McDaniels. And I think those 3 guys we talked about, Dante, Walker, and Naz Reid, they got to make shots. If they don't make shots, there's a problem. I want to make one quick point real quick. You know, the Denver series with OKC, that game 7, and Caruso was checking Joker. I was really shocked how physical Caruso was with Joker, and the referees weren't calling it. I see that OKC, they defend their guys so close. I'm surprised the physicality that they get away with is a little surprising to me.
So what is it? Does it look like something in the 90s?
It's physical, man. It does.
I wouldn't go so far as to call it 90s, but it was very physical. And part of that's on the Joker because, I mean, I coached ball for 10 years up in PG County. And what sometimes you have to do when they're getting physical like that is you may have to eat a flagrant and you may have to eat a technical with a really well-placed elbow to just let the guy know you're going to pay a price for this, you know, because I used to teach guys how to rebound a certain way where you don't swing elbows, but you flare them out as you're bringing the ball down to your chest. And if someone runs into one of those, it isn't intentional, but it makes them think twice. And that's what you're looking for. If the refs aren't going to enforce the physicality, you kind of have to be your own enforcer.
See, I think the Joker causes a lot of that physicality himself. and he gets away with a lot of pushing. So I thought the referees just kind of let them play. What Caruso was doing was beating them to a spot, and then they were sneaking up behind them when they tried to throw the entry pass to him. Other guys were sneaking up behind them, and I thought even the Joker had to just try to change positions, or I just didn't see a matter of any changing by Denver's coach, at least not on the offensive end.
I thought it was a hell of a strategic decision in Game 7 to put Caruso on Joker for 80% of that game, knowing that they had those two bigs back there. So when Joker would spin or needed help, they had the 7-footers. I thought that was a splendid decision.
Enough on Denver. They're out.
They are a good team too.
They are a good team.
I think they helped OKC grow a little bit by getting
OKC needed to grow.
Yes.
And they needed to grow.
Yes.
Let's have a series prediction. I know it's only game 1, and OKC looked great. Minnesota looked troubled.
They only looked great. They only looked great in the second half. The second half of that game.
Hold on.
First half, they weren't that great.
Hold on. Then let me start with you, Chuck. Who's winning the series?
Minnesota.
Larry, who's winning the series?
OKC's probably gonna win in 6 games.
Al, who's
I got
winning the
OKC
series?
in 6. Unless they can figure out a way to get these guys, they got to force OKC to take the ball out of the net. If it's transition off of defense, they got no chance.
Tough. I agree.
I got OKC in 5, and I hope that's what it will be. All right, let's take a look at what the game that's playing tonight. It's a big game, of course, to me here in Indianapolis, and those of us who follow the Pacers, as I have since 1967, the beginning. Indiana and New York have a long playoff history and really interesting playoff history. How do you see the playoffs going, at least from the start, Chuck, with New York and Indiana?
Dave, check the messages.
Again, another impressive team. Like
What's that?
So we may have some comments in there. Some of our viewers may be making a prediction.
Okay, gotcha.
They have OKC, or excuse me, the Pacers are like OKC. They got a deep bench, and all of them can shoot that basketball. They're going through a period where, man, they play fast. Everyone can knock down shots. So it comes down to this. The 5 guys, and I'm talking about OG, Bridges, Cat, Brunson, and Hart all have to score. If they can do that, they can play with the Pacers. But if 2 of them, of the 5 of them, don't score, it could be tough. Pacers could beat them.
Larry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking for a rematch from last year. I think the Pacers won games 6 and 7 after being behind 3-2, and I'm looking for this rematch. I think the Pacers. What'll be interesting, and again, I'm a defensive guy. I look for the Pacers to guard Brunson full court. Neesmith and what's the other guys? Nembhard, yeah. They both play very good defense, and I think they're going to probably put a lot of pressure on Brunson. And I want to see, with New York playing a short bench most of the time, I'm curious to see how he's going to stand up against that.
Speaking of a short bench, Al, the coach, New York's coach, tends to run these guys to death. And the same starting lineup, they're really only about 7 deep. So what does New York have to do to stay up with Indiana and not overuse the strengths of the players that they have?
Well, he's got a huge problem because pace of play is going to determine this series. If Indiana's allowed to run, New York's not going to be able to keep up with them. One of the things that people have hung their hat on relative to the series is they talk about last year when New York was injured at the very end. What they don't talk about is soft tissue injuries, which is what most of them had, is a function of wear and tear. New York's coach kills his players over the course of a 7-game series. And frankly, I think Brunson's a little better than Halliburton. I think Towns is a little better than Indiana center. But Indiana's deeper, and their coach believes in their depth. He will play them. That's going to help over a long series. I give New York a slight edge because they're at home if it's a 7-game series, but it would not surprise me if Indiana gets this done in 6 or 7 because their depth is going to be there. And they're tall, really tall across the board. You know, New York's best rebounder is 6'4", Josh Hart. The smallest guy Indiana's throwing out there is 6'5". And he's their point guard.
And that makes a difference. Let's talk about Halliburton. Halliburton was called the most overrated player in the NBA by a private poll of players through The Athletic. What do you think, Al? Is
BS.
Halliburton overrated?
No, BS. I mean, straight. He talks his share of smack. He can play. He can really play. His game isn't the prettiest. His jump shot isn't the prettiest. But like I said, I coached for 10 years. I don't care about none of that. I care if you can handle your business when you have to handle your business. There's one guy left in the playoffs who's a better finisher in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately for Indiana, he's on the other side, and that's Brunson. They're going to have to tire him out. But Halliburton is the real deal. People forget when they closed out Milwaukee, he took Giannis to the hole to win that series. He wasn't. That ain't nothing overrated about that. I'm sorry. Giannis is one of the best defenders in the league.
I'm expecting some apologies from Chuck Snowden, who hated on Halliburton last year and kind of hated on him at the start of this season, but he's coming around. What do you think, Chuck?
I still think he's a little overrated, although in the playoff, well, I do. I think, this is the way I measure overrated.
Okay.
He ain't no $50 million a year player to Chuck Snowden. I can list 10.
We know how you feel about money.
Well, how else are we measuring it? How else are we measuring it? His numbers aren't that impressive. Let me tell you, Indiana, yes, he's a good player, but he's just one of 9 of them. And they all make big shots in the fourth quarter. Now, I'll admit, in the playoffs, he's had those 2, you mentioned it, Al. He had 2 plays against Milwaukee, and he had a big win against
Cleveland.
Yeah, a big win. He hit a big shot there too.
Aren't you supposed to show up in the playoffs, though? Aren't you supposed to show up in the playoffs?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to just wind you up. You know,
that was a regular season vote too. That was a regular season vote.
Okay, Larry, your thoughts on Halliburton?
I thought the poll was garbage. I can't imagine how they put it together. Normally, if you were going to say who's the best player in the league, everybody would vote on everybody in the league. I can't imagine. Only way I'd have to see the poll, but I want to think they listed a few players and put his name on a list of about 5 or 6 players, and somebody picked him. The guy can play. I mean, he's a decent player. You know, he's the real key to their offense. He handles the ball, he passes well, and he showed up pretty big.
All right, now let's talk about arguably the best player in the playoffs this season, and that's Jalen Brunson. Brunson is hard to stop. He's only about 6'1", but he's thick, he's muscular, and he finds a way to get to the hoop. Larry, your thoughts on Jalen Brunson?
Oh, I was going to answer him later. As I'll answer the question that you put in the thing. I think he would be the MVP of the playoffs right now if I had to pick somebody. He can flat out play. I'm curious how he's going to do if he has full court pressure, you know, for the whole game. And I expect Indiana to do it. If I was Indiana's coach, what's the guy, Nembhard and Neesmith, I would have them pressuring him all the time. But if you let him get the ball down court and don't wear him down, look out. He's a killer.
Chuck.
I love big body Brunson. He's what we call, you know, in New York, they had the Yankees, they had a guy named Mario Rivera. He's a closer. And it's amazing what he does down the stretch, and they can't stop that. He can't stop him. And so I find it interesting. So, yes, I do think he's been the MVP to date. I think he is a tough out. I'm not worried about him. I'm just worried about OG and Bridges. Those 2 guys are the keys for me. If they score, it's going to be tough for the Pacers.
Al, let me ask you, is Jalen Brunson a little bit too ball dominant? Is that the reason we see so much of him? What do you think?
Well, the way the Knicks are constructed, he is ball dominant, but he has to be. They do not have what they have. They don't have shooters. They have scorers. And because they don't have guys who can sit in the corner and take the pass and spot up and knock stuff down, and their shooters, their wing players are up and down. Some days you're 6 out of 7. Some days you're 2 out of 13. So what ends up happening is Jalen finds himself in the fourth quarter going to the one dude he can trust, himself. And so that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. He is, in my opinion, too ball dominant, but that's the coach in me talking. But the fact of the matter is that is the way they have to play to win.
Now, will Tibbs, though, have to make some adjustments? That's Coach Thibodeau, the coach of the Knicks. What adjustments will he have to make so that his players don't get too worn out? And I'll start with you, Al.
He's got to play his bench. He's got.
But he won't.
But he has no choice. Indiana is the one team where you cannot afford to go 7 or 8 deep. Even if those 6, 7, 8 players have plus minuses that you don't look for, over the course of the long series, he is going to have to get those guys a blow. Remember, his best rebounder is 6'4". He's going up against trees for 7 games. He's going to do what he did last year. He's going to get a hammy. OG Anunoby, a hammy. Jalen Brunson, an ankle. All of these soft tissue injuries that happen because of your wear and tear. You have to give the guys a blow. You have no choice. You have no choice, or Indiana's going to beat them.
Well,
Chuck,
I think that's
what does Tibbs got to do?
I think that's overrated, the wear and tear and all that stuff. The deep bench is an issue. If they don't have it, they don't have it. They got Quigley. They've got that guy, Mitch, whatever his name, the center.
Mitchell Robinson.
Mitchell Robinson. And then they play Ochoa sometimes. Their bench he's limited. That's why it's important that those two, OG and Bridges, play well. And it's just the way it is. Look, we all agree, because we're all of a different, we're older. Will Chamberlain never missed a game. Never missed one game. They average more than 48 minutes a game. So I think that the conditioning thing is a little bit overrated, but we'll see. They don't have the deep bench. That's the bottom line.
What does Tibbs got to do, Larry?
Well, I mean, I keep harping on. Here's the thing. One thing I think Tibbs gets a bad rap because they say he wears his players out, but his players thus far do not look tired at the end of games. Now, if I'm Indiana, and I think Al touched on it earlier, pace the game, and I'm saying pressure, I'm going to test that. If that wears them down, I think New York's in trouble because I don't know who their backup point guard is, to tell you the truth. I can't go with Cam too long out there. Cat is the other guy that can score, and I think he has to show up really big. He has to be consistent, give New York a chance. I think Indiana's just too deep for him.
All right, and that's an accurate prediction. I appreciate that. Let me speak to the coach of the Pacers, and then we'll move on. Rick Carlisle, I don't think gets enough credit. And Larry, I want you to speak to Rick Carlisle's presence as a coach, what he's brought to the Pacers, and how he has evolved as a coach.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how he's evolved as a coach, how he's evolved, but I can speak to how he's doing now. Okay. So what he's doing, he's using his players well. I like his strategy. He controls the pace of the game, and it's very hard they have a lot of team speed. They have very balanced scoring. I think they've all starters average between 14.6 and 18.8. Everybody's participating. Then the other guy, the bench, Mathurin, he's averaging double figures. So he's getting a lot of production out of everybody. And I think he's doing a new phase of basketball, which I think everybody's got to play defense. Everybody's got to be able to shoot. You can't just stand in the corner and shoot 3-pointers. There's no weak spots. All of the guys can guard multiple positions. And I think he's using his players well.
Well, one of the things that has been said about Carlisle, because Carlisle used to call every play when he was with Dallas as a head coach, when he was with Detroit as a head coach, and when he had his first stint in Indiana back in the early 2000s. He's now letting the players play. Al Richardson, how important is that to let players play today?
Well, as a coach, you said Al, I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all
You
good.
can speak up at some point, Larry. Go ahead, Al.
It's the only way to go because a lot of these games, because if you'll notice, a lot of these games are coming down to one or two possessions. And the thing that a lot of these coaches are doing now is in the last 10 seconds of these games, when the game is on the line, if you notice, most of them are no longer calling timeouts. They're saying, play it out, let the guys who you trust finish the game, bringing people to the side, taking over, and essentially over coaching. You practice this stuff all year long. You do the drills, you do situational stuff. There's really no need in Rick Carlisle calling every play at this point. If you are this deep into the playoffs and you got to call every play for your guys, you've done a terrible job during the year. You should be on autopilot at this point. You should know what to do in each sequence under every circumstance. And frankly, a good coach who has done his job during the year is calling his timeouts to give his guys a blow.
And I think that's what he is doing, and he's doing it well. Chuck, your thoughts on Rick Carlisle?
I think, and I've said this to you before, David, I think Carlisle is the MVP of this team. The way he has put this team together, the pieces, the strategy, as Larry mentioned, the defense that they play, picking you up all over the court, the 10 players. I mean, when you look at Toppin, McConnell, Matheson, Shepard, and Bryant, along with the starters, man, that's a lot of talent. And they hit shots in the fourth quarter. They make shots. Today's basketball is about shot making. If you're making shots, you're going to be in the game. If you're not making shots, you're not. And they make shots.
All right. Now, let's talk about something that is kind of near and dear to me. I grew up in Indianapolis. I love the Midwest, and I support the Midwest. But the reality is 3 of the 4 teams in the Final Four are considered small market. The NBA is based in New York City. They would love to see the Knicks do something. Knicks haven't won since 1973. The Pacers haven't won since 1973. Is the small market, 3 teams from smaller markets, does that hurt the NBA, Chuck?
Boy, David, there lies the $1 million question, because we have teams like Detroit, Houston, Cleveland, San Antonio, Orlando, and Denver on the come. So we got to get used to these small market, and your words, teams. Will the nation gravitate to that? That is the question. I don't know the answer to that, David. Honestly, I don't. I saw a stat the other day that said this is the first time since 1996 that a Texas or California team has not been in the Western Conference Finals. I know. I was shocked at that. So it's the $1 million question. It's a legitimate question, David. You're 100% right on there, and I don't know the answer.
Now, the voice of reason, who I learn from every single week, Larry Abels. Let me ask you, because you watch 105 games a week, okay. Maybe.
First, I have to let Chuck know that Houston's not a small market.
That is true. Houston's the 3rd largest city in the country. Anyway, go ahead, Larry.
This has absolutely no impact on the NBA. All right.
I hope you're right.
Huh?
I hope you're right.
No. Okay. The NBA is finishing up a contract with I want to say Disney and TNT. They just signed. It was an 8-year contract for $24 billion. Their new contract, which starts next year, $76 billion. It ain't going to matter.
All right? It has nothing to do with viewership, Larry.
What was his question, Chuck?
Is it going to hurt the NBA in terms of viewership?
The NBA is the one making the money. All right. Now, the advertisers might be concerned about that. But no, the NBA just signed a contract 3 times the size of their previous contract. So it's going to be fine for them. Okay. It won't matter. It won't matter to them. Maybe some of the viewers, not some of the advertisers might care, but they locked in for 11 years, starting to 2037. Hopefully we'll be around for the next contract.
Well, we may be around, but we won't be around, if you get my meaning. Anyway, Al, your thoughts on the smaller market teams dominating the Final Four, and New York City maybe being the one to bail the NBA out. What do you think? Am I wrong about that?
Well, I'm not so sure. Bailout is the word I would use, because from the standpoint of the money, the NBA is probably going to be fine. From the standpoint of viewership, what I do believe is that this won't matter for people who are into ball, who are not, quote, casuals. But for those who are casuals, having that cachet, New York, LA, Chicago, that, for lack of a better way of saying it, name recognition, it may matter to them. But again, if the goal is the bottom line, i.e. money, they're going to be fine, because they're already getting the money. They're going to get the money no matter who plays. If it is about viewership, and this is something that advertisers will consider, you know, this year, after the Lakers were eliminated, viewership has gone down 33%. That's not a number that you can ignore. I mean, frankly, the Lakers played basketball without a center, so I don't know why it's a surprise they didn't go anywhere. But I don't care what anyone says. For all of the people who talk about, I'm so glad LeBron's not in it. Well, guess what? The viewers don't apparently feel that way.
Well, let me ask you, let's ask you guys this, and we'll move on from the NBA. What can the NBA learn from the NFL? Because the NFL doesn't have the market problem. They don't have that. The smallest market in America, Green Bay, Wisconsin, is considered one of the jewels of the NFL. And when they're on TV, the viewership goes up. What can the NBA learn from the NFL, Al?
Well, I don't know if this is a plus or a minus, but one of the things the NFL has done is they have learned to market their sport with this huge thing in mind. NFL players wear helmets, so they are not wedded to faces. You know what I'm saying? They have to accentuate the team concept. One of the things that they do market is quarterbacks. So even though you don't see their faces, they market positions, not people. And that has seemed to help, because like you said, even though when Green Bay plays, you know, the viewership goes up. But what does Green Bay have that a lot of teams don't have? They got 30 years of excellent quarterback play.
Yes, they do.
Brett Favre,
yes, they do.
Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. And I can guarantee you the NFL's ratings, you put one of these teams on here that don't have a quarterback, and people ain't going to watch. That's just the way it is. There's a reason why those guys make that money. It's because the NFL has chosen to market them. They have chosen to set up rules to accentuate their skills, and that's what people want to see. So I'm not so sure the NBA can replicate that, because they may not be able to tailor their marketing or their rules to a particular position.
Chuck, do you agree with that?
So I do. I want to piggyback though on something Al said earlier, and that is, it might not be. I do think the cities that these teams are emerging from is a factor. But the stars, we're going through a transformation in the stars, right? LeBron's is older, Steph's older, KD's older, Harden's older, etc. And the question is, can the new stars, first of all, who are they? And can those stars carry the league like those guys carried it? And that's another thing we got to keep an eye on. I mean, that's just the truth.
Larry.
I think it's different than that. I think the main thing is, number one, the NBA is the second most popular sport. It has a share of the market. The NFL is just more popular. The main reason I think it's more popular is because their games are more important, because they play less games.
Okay.
You know, when you have that, each game is more valuable. Yep. Nobody wants to give up money, so the games are going to continue to be on. And if football players could stand the physical pounding, they probably play more games. But I really think each game is more important. So, you know, they have a hold on the market.
All right. Before we move off the NBA, got to ask a question about the game that I concern myself most with, Indiana against New York. Who is winning the series? And you know, I'm hoping it's the Pacers. Who do you think it's going to be, Larry?
Gosh, you know what? Coin toss right now. Like I was going back to looking at last year how the Pacers stole it, but I remember I shouldn't say stole it. They overcame a 3-2 deficit. Randall didn't play in that series though, which kind of threw me back. First, I was going to say New York, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Randall didn't play. They got Cat, but right now I think the Pacers are playing better. I look for them to win about. I think it's 7 games. I'll go with the Pacers.
Oh, Larry, thank you so much, sir. That was such a good analysis.
Now, that can change after I actually see them play tonight.
You're so correct about that. Chuck,
I
who's
say the
winning?
Knicks in 7. Al made a point. They have the home court, and I think it is an even series. And I think that having that game 7 at home is going to be big for them. And I like the Pacers, but I like the Knicks in 7.
You don't like them enough.
No.
Anyway, Al, who's winning the series?
I think the Pacers are a slightly better team. I think the Knicks will win in 7, and I'm going to just introduce some real facts. It's still a business, and these big marketplaces in game 7s, they tend to get calls. They tend, the ball just, for lack of a better way of saying it, the ball just tends to bounce their way, and their finisher is great at getting to the free throw line and getting calls.
Yes, that is true.
Covered one-on-one. That's going to be the problem. Is they are going to have to wear him. They're going to have to take his legs from him. If he has his legs in game 7, the Pacers are going to have a problem.
All right.
That's the key. That's the key. You asked the question earlier, was he too ball dominant? If Brunson is now ball dominant, the Knicks are in trouble.
They can't win. You're right about
that. They can wear him down. They're in trouble.
Yeah.
Hey,
they got to take his legs. They got to take his legs.
Before we move off this subject, I just want to give a quick shout out to Miles Turner. I think he's a guy on your team that, again, I don't know he gets enough credit. Miles Turner does whatever is required on that team. And Al mentioned the fact that your team is bigger than the Knicks. I don't agree with that. But Miles Turner is their big. And he hits shots from the outside. He gets rebounds. He makes block shots at critical times. And I don't think we talk about him enough. Miles Turner is a player.
Well, thank you so much for advocating Miles Turner and the Indiana Pacers. Who do you think is winning? You think the Knicks are winning?
Knicks in 7.
Pacers in 5. Anyway, now I'm going to talk about something, Chuck. Yeah, that was very objective. Thank you so much. All right. Now we're going to move on to the NFL. And we've got one question. And this is going to start with Chuck Snowden, because this is a player who he doesn't really give a damn about. Thinks he's overpaid. He's got an overpaid contract. Brock Purdy, $53 million a year. Is he worth it? Chuck.
I don't think
start
so.
with you.
I absolutely positively do not do. Okay, look, I think his comparable, Chuck Snowden thinks his comparable is Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. I think that's his comp. That's his comp. His comp ain't Lamar Jackson and Mahomes and those kinds of folks. And he's getting paid like them. No.
Well, the top of the market now is $60 million a year with Dallas's quarterback. I mean, so he's significantly under that.
Geno and Arnold and Mayfield, the 3 of them just recently signed. Geno and Arnold this year, and they're getting 33. They're getting an average about 33 million a year.
But they're retread good quarterbacks, and so there's kind of a pecking order.
I think that's what Brock Purdy is.
No, Brock Purdy is in the first year that he gets a chance to get the money, and he's succeeded. He's been in the Super Bowl. If he wasn't Mr. Irrelevant, you wouldn't think that.
No, I wouldn't. I had nothing to do with this.
I think it does.
I
think on some level.
What's special about him?
What's not special about him? He hits a receiver.
Oh, they didn't make the play. Did they make the playoffs last year?
They went to the Super Bowl with him.
Did they make the playoffs last year?
Dak Prescott
No,
didn't
they
make
didn't
the
make
play.
the playoffs, but they had Ayuk was out, Debo Samuel was hurt most of the time, McCaffrey was out the whole year. So
Thank you.
you
Thank
lose
you,
that
voice
kind
of
of stuff. It's
reason.
kind of hard to make the playoffs.
Thank you, voice of reason.
Again, I think Chuck Snow. Do you think so? Who do you think his comparable is?
At
Do you think
$53
he's as
million
good as-
a year, he's in the lower half of the top tier quarterbacks, and that's about where he belongs. Dak Prescott is at the highest end. Now, Dak Prescott, does he deserve $60 million? He's not even been to the Super Bowl. He barely won any playoff games. So, but we're not. I don't hear you complaining about Dak Prescott's contract.
I had complained about that when he signed that years ago.
So what should Dak Prescott have been making?
I don't think he's no
40.
60, I don't think he's no 60 million. But they did go 12-5 3 years in a row, and he had some numbers, but he can't deliver in the playoffs. No, I don't think he's a $60 million quarterback either.
All right, Al Richardson, your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
One last thing.
Overpaid.
Last time I had this kind of a passionate argument with you about the prices of the quarterbacks is with Daniel Jones when they signed him for $40 million. And now what do you guys say?
Well,
40 million is nothing. Go ahead, Al.
Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence. I've got Brock Purdy anywhere between 7 and 13 in terms of quarterbacks, but what he's being paid is kind of the going rate, to be honest.
Thank you.
And given where he has gone with that team, i.e. the Super Bowl, and I believe it's 2 NFC championship games, or that's reasonable. Now, I will say this about Brock Purdy. When I'd mentioned to David how I just come off of 7 years of working in master control, and I was the technical director for most of the live events. And the league we had was I believe it's the Pac 8, the Big 8, whatever they were, with all these leagues switching around. But I saw Brock Purdy play at Iowa State a good 7 or 8 times. And I wasn't surprised at how well he did at San Francisco. I was surprised that he lasted to be the last player picked. I could see at Iowa State that he had a chance to be pretty good. Like I said,
that team was loaded. Al, that team was loaded. And the quarterback who was on that team before him took the team to the Super Bowl too, and we don't even know his name. I can't remember the guy's name.
Garoppolo.
Yes, and he ain't even in the league.
No, he is. He's with Oakland.
Is he? Well,
he's at the
no,
end.
he's not. He's not with the Raiders. He ain't with Oakland.
That's right. He may be gone. He may be out of the
He
league.
ain't in the league. He is
I'm not
in the
surprised.
league.
I'm not
My point
surprised,
is
though.
that team was loaded.
Purdy's getting the going rate, though. He's getting the going. We're going to find out how good he is now that Debo is in DC and McCaffrey is still on the mend. We will find out. But I will say this: comparing him to Daniel Jones, that's
No, I wasn't comparing him to Daniel Jones. I was saying that.
But that was a couple of
I was
years
not
ago
comparing
argument.
him to- right, David. I wasn't comparing
That's
him
a couple of years
I was
ago
comparing
argument.
him to Sam Darnold and Geno Smith.
Well,
And,
first of all, let me defend Geno Smith. Geno Smith has had 3 or 4 good years as a retread quarterback and has succeeded. Larry, let me ask you. You're the voice of reason. You can end this argument. Where are you?
Al, I always tell him I don't care how much a person makes, but Al touched on it. The going rate right now is probably right around 53 million. So the whole thing is, do you want him on your team or not? If San Francisco wanted him, that's probably what they had to pay to keep him. He may turn out just like when New York had to make that decision about Daniel Jones. Sometimes you got to make a call. Washington had to make it about Kirk Cousins. Sometimes you got to make a call and you got to pay the going rate at the time you got to make the call.
Was I right or wrong about when we were having this argument? Was I right or wrong about Daniel Jones?
No, you were.
I thought the Giants made the right call at the time, and that's just what it costs. If you don't have an alternative plan, I mean, what are you going to do? You got to pay the going rate.
Quarterbacks are considered in a different category of pay scale, and you've got to pay what the going rate is or what the reasonable going rate is.
I mean, here's the real bottom line about any athlete in any sport. Why should any of them make over $5 million? Where else are they going to go to get that type of money?
Minnesota was 14-3, and they did not sign their quarterback, and so he had to sign with Seattle for $33 million.
They have an alternative plan in Minnesota. They have an
But that's where
alternative
he's
plan.
tiered. That's where he's tiered. The NFL has created a kind of a tier system.
But Minnesota has an alternative plan. They have
And
another
they've got
quarterback in
a
the wings.
draft. They drafted a young quarterback
Right.
that they want to develop.
I don't
They
know if
drafted
San
him in the
Francisco
first
Baker
has
round.
that.
Mayfield's been to the playoffs 2 years in a row, has won first-round matches, and they signed him for $33 million. Brock Purdy's not better than those two.
Right now he is. He's being
Okay.
paid
All
what
he
he's
has
supposed to
to
get paid.
all he really has to do is be valuable to San Francisco.
San Francisco.
There you go.
That's all he has to be. And San Francisco doesn't have an alternative plan. Matter of fact, they really, when you go back to their history, they were going after another quarterback. It traded draft picks, draft real high, and ended up, I can't even think of the guy's name, but ended up getting rid of the quarterback and playing Mr. Irrelevant. So they miss on some of these quarterbacks a lot of times, but they're sold on them.
We're going to wrap things up with a little shot at baseball, Major League Baseball. We don't talk about baseball very often, but the late Pete Rose and the late shoeless Joe Jackson were reinstated by Major League Baseball, and they are free to potentially be members of the Hall of Fame. Let's talk about Pete Rose, the Major League Baseball hits leader with over 4,000 hits in his career. Larry, let me start with you. You're the baseball player. You're the baseball expert. Should Pete Rose, the late Pete Rose, be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I think based on his exploits on the field, perhaps. And I'll draw a distinction between him and Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson was kicked out for throwing games. While Pete Rose bet, there's no real evidence that he threw any games. We don't really know. So absent evidence of him actually throwing games and losing on purpose, I have no problem with him being in the Hall of Fame. And I would just include on his plaque that, he was subsequently banned for so many years because he bet on games.
How great a player was Pete Rose?
All-time hits leader. Speaks for itself.
So he was a great player.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up. Chuck Snowden,
I
Pete
think-
Rose,
I
the late
think,
Pete Rose.
His playing days, if he didn't bet, and that doesn't sound like he did bet during his playing days. I know it was his managerial days. I think it's time to put him in the Hall of Fame. He's the all-time hits leader. As a player, Pete did his thing as a player. And then the gambling happened as a manager. I think it's about time to put him in. I do.
Al Richardson, Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, out of the Hall of Fame.
He should be in, but I have a huge issue with the way this has happened. You put him in while he's alive, and you put on his plaque all of his legacy. You include it all. The Hall of Fame is not the Hall of the great guys.
No,
It's the Hall.
Ty Cobb.
It's the Hall. It is a museum. It is the history of the game. I'm sick and tired of these people in the moral police. You don't want to let Pete Rose in. You don't want to let Barry Bonds and Clemens in, but you don't have a problem with Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and some of these other guys who never played against a black guy. Come on now. It's about the history of the game, period. You want to put everything that they're alleged to have done, that is fine. But the idea that you got these guys in the writers who are the moral police talking about cheating this and cheating that, people who lie to their wives, cheat on their taxes, and do all of this other stuff, and yet you're going to let them be in charge of who gets in? They're the gatekeepers? Really? Really?
I like it, Al.
said.
I like it.
Well said. We are going to wrap this program up with closing comments. And who has a closing comment? Larry Abels, do you?
I don't have one this week.
Okay. What about you, Chuck
Mine-
Snowden?
Mine is a quick one. Just shout out to Scotty Scheffler, right? He's 28 years old, has won 3 majors. He's been number 1 in the world 100 straight weeks. He's his last 2 matches, he's won by 8 and 5 strokes. I mean, only Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods have won 3 majors less than 28 or 28 years or less in terms of age. So shout out to old Scotty Scheffler. He's playing again this weekend, trying to go for 3 in a row in terms of weeks winning. And I just wanted to make mention of him. He won the PGA last week.
Al, do you have any closing comments?
One, thank you for having me. This has been a blast. I hope to do it again. You know,
You
that's
will.
my closing comment.
You will be called on again. I can
Good.
assure you
I hope
of
to do it
that.
again. You guys have been excellent hosts. And my DC brothers, I hope to see you on the trail, provided I can get out of negotiations with these contracts.
Well, let's hope so, Al.
Hey,
Let me
by the way,
conclude.
thanks to all the people who had comments, and I know we didn't shout them all out. I know Kung Fu, you never miss us every week, but and there were some new names in there too. So thank you guys for listening and making comments. And we apologize. We kind of got passionate about a couple things and didn't acknowledge.
Well, we showed who was talking. All right, let me conclude by saying I'm going to attend my 52nd Indianapolis 500. For those of you who know me, you know that is my all-time favorite sporting event. It's a family affair that unfortunately my late father and mother can no longer attend, but they got me started going to the race many years ago when I was a kid, and I love going to the track. So I'm looking forward to Sunday. Looks like it's going to rain. My daughter's coming in town. She always says it rains, Dad, every time. Well, it does rain. It rained last year, but we got the race in. 350,000 people, the biggest sporting event in the world.
It's crazy.
And I'll be there. Anyway, on that
Enjoy.
note, I will enjoy it. Thank you very much, Al Richardson, Chuck Snowden, Larry Abels. I'm David Burnett,
David.
and this is Real Fellas Talk Sports.